Hello and welcome back. Today we're going to be taking a look at Linq2Sql and how to utilize its delayed execution to remove redundancies from your code. What I have in the Dimecast website is multiple methods that will return very similar data, if not the exact same data, simply filtered by different values. And originally I've written this as the same code multiple times, but as I start adding to add features and new data to be returned, I'm finding myself having to make this change over and over again. And that's just not acceptable. Too much friction for me. So I'm going to use Linq2Sql's Delayed Execution to actually remove all the common code into one method and return the expression as unexecuted SQL back, and then just add my filter clauses later. So let's go ahead and get started. This is the method right here that I'd like to remove the redundancies of. As you can tell, it's a relatively straightforward statement that filters off of the episode tag by the tag name. And if you take a look up at the level, I have the exact same thing. I'm looking at the level and I'm filtering by level name. So here's one example of the same code in two places. So before we get started, I want to make sure that my code actually runs. I have a simple integration test that simply retrieves all the data by tag type from the database and makes sure that only the items returned have values that match my tag type and that the counts are the same. Let's go ahead and run this and make sure it runs just fine. So this test should be running now. This is an integration test, so I am dependent on data being in my database, unfortunately. As you can tell, it did pass just fine. So let's go ahead and start the refactor. What I like to do is take all this common code right here and move it into a new method. I'm going to come down here and I'm going to create a region called helper methods, just so I can isolate my helpers. I'm going to create a method real quick called private void and say get quick view as expression. And we'll do a return. Down here I'm not going to render it as .toList because I don't want it to execute right away. But because we want this to be relatively generic, I'm going to go ahead and remove my filter by tag name and remove my join. Well, I do need to change this from a void to return type of IEnumerable. Cast episode quick view. This will return me back an enumeration of these items. Now that I've got my helper method created, let's go ahead and wire it up so I can use it. Let's go ahead and comment this code out so I can keep it for later in case I need it as a reference. Let's do var raw item, raw data, and I'll call my method that will return me back the unexecuted link statements. Filter data, and we're going to go ahead and create another link statement that will append to my expression tree and then tell it to execute. From R in raw data. I want to join on the episode tags. Call this tag where r.episode ID equals tag.episode ID. I'm going to say where tag type.name, tag name, and we're just going to do a select R. Now right here I'm not actually going to execute as well because I want to be able to show the delayed execution. And we'll do return filtered data.toList. This .toList will actually tell Linq2Sql to execute the statement and return me back the values. Let's go ahead and put a breakpoint here and rerun my test. Let's see what it looks like. So if I step over this, it is now building my raw statement. Now it will append to it and see I now have a little bit different data. I will now return the values. Send that over to our unit test. Make sure I do have 4 items, and now we'll just assert that all 4 items actually do have the end unit, and they do. Go ahead and take a look at my test output, and sure enough, everything succeeded just fine. So what I've actually done here, let's take a look at this, is gone and built the original expression tree. I've then added onto it a join to another table, and then a filter. Without this code right here, I would have simply returned every episode that was active, and that would not have been what I wanted. And then I told Linq to execute the statement by doing a .toList. I could have simply returned it back as an IEnumerable without the .toList, and it would have been delayed. The delay execution would not have fired until I started using that list. But in my case right here, I actually wanted to return it back as a executed command. So now that we know that our test works, I can go ahead and delete this code. And I've just removed a significant amount of redundancy and overhead from my application. So now when I want to add a new feature, a new return type, all I have to do is go to my helper method right here and add on to it. I don't have to go and find which 5 places need this added onto. This will remove my friction and help me code a little bit faster. Well, there you go. Now you've seen how you can use Linq2Sql's delayed execution to remove redundancies. Hope you learned something. Until next time.